and, well, I'm a little skittish. I'm just going to take my money out today. I'm going to run home and stuff it in my mattress. If you're still in business next week, I'll come back and redeposit. The problem is that that's called a run on the bank. The bank will have to close its doors and then wait for the FDIC to show up with their empty money bag to bail them out. Am I pretty much on the spot there?
Yeah, and John, I've been noticing, and we've been putting it in a forecaster, that new instructions on bank accounts are being sent out to deposit and checking account owners at those banks. And what they're saying is that if you want to take a large amount of money out of the bank, let's say $10,000, you have to order it and take a couple of weeks to get it, and which tells us that the banks have very little cash, and when they want cash, they have to go to the Fed and have them ship it to them.
In defense of small banks, however, unlike medium-sized to larger banks, small banks are very highly regulated. I think there's half a dozen government agencies that regulate small banks. And they have to meet very stringent deposit requirements. I mean, this is where the problem actually lies right now. Mm-hmm. Why is the economy in a slump? Well, people aren't spending. Consumers constitute 70% of the economy. And the reason why consumers aren't spending is because banks aren't lending.
Well, and we're starting to get off of that merry-go-round that we have become nothing but a consumer nation. We're not here to live our lives and buy the staples that we need. You know, a few luxuries to make it all the more palatable, you know, nice color screen TV and, you know, the air conditioning and all the little accoutrements that we've become accustomed to. Madison Avenue, along with Wall Street, along with the bankers, have set up a three-ring circus, and the show's over. The popcorn's gone. It's time to get the heck out.
Yeah, I mean, those new home sales numbers that came out today, 90% of those sales were based on people that qualified for the $8,000 government handout. And it's the only reason why it's just like the cash for clunkers deal. And, I mean, yeah. What are the big three going to do next month when the cash for clunkers deal is ended?
Well, and they've already said on Bloomberg this morning, I caught this. Well, take a look for auto sales in September, October, November to take a nosedive. Now, these were people that didn't necessarily have the money in the bank to write a check to the dealer to take advantage of the $4,500, you know, the cash for clunkers deal. And they've gone out there and boosted August sales in the last week or two. They boosted the sales, but that's another wealth distribution. Granny from Kokomo, Indiana, just paid for that herself, and everybody in between, as I said before. It's over. The stimulus, this is false stimulus of the economy. When you're pumping money into government grants and funds, that's all coming out of future wage earnings of the American people. It is not sustainable any more than this madcap policy that Uncle Helicopter Ben and Geithner and everybody before him has advocated. It's done. It's over.
Yeah. Why do you think the Chinese are reneging on the derivatives?
Well, I wished I could be a fly on the wall in that G20 meeting. I'll tell you what, the fur's going to be flying because these people in every country that they have their funny money system set up in, they're all under the same gun. There's not any way out of this, and they're trapped. And I'm wondering, Bob, what this would have looked like without giving the false illusion of bailing people out. Would this economy have gone further south faster?
I think so. I think they made a terrible political mistake in their lust to be reelected a year from November by putting the bulk of the program in next year. And, you know, they came out early May, and by the end of July, everybody got their money who was going to get it on the first part of the stimulus program. 92%, from what I understand, use it to pay bills, not to buy things. And so that was a failure. And you get this big gap of some 5 months, maybe as much as 9 months before the other stimuli takes place. And they just screwed the whole thing up. I mean, these people are so incompetent, so greedy, so idiotic, it's unbelievable.
We'll get...
And so that's why I thought they need a second program, and they still may need one.
We'll be right back. There we go. I'm the host. I get to do this first. At any rate, this is what Ron Paul said about, well, what the Fed is up to and why his bill, 1207, is so important. Talk to me, Ron. He's not talking to me.
1207, the bill to audit the Federal Reserve. What is it that they are so concerned about? What information are they hiding from the American people? The screed is transparency is okay, except for those things they don't want to be transparent. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke argues that H.R. 1207, the legislation to audit the Federal Reserve, would politicize monetary policy. He claims that monetary policy must remain independent, that is, secret. He ignores history because chairmen of the Federal Reserve in the past, especially when up for reappointment, do their best to accommodate the president with politically driven low interest rates and a bubble economy. Former Federal Reserve Board Chairman Arthur Burns, when asked about all the inflation he brought about in 1971 before Nixon's reelection, said that the Fed has to do what the president wants it to do, or it would lose its independence. That about tells you everything. Not by accident, Chairman Burns strongly supported Nixon's program of wage and price controls the same year, but I guess that's not political. Is not making secret deals with the likes of Goldman Sachs, international financial institutions, foreign governments, and foreign central banks politicizing monetary policy? Bernanke argues that the knowledge that their discussions and decisions will one day be scrutinized will compromise the freedom of the Open Market Committee to pursue sound policy. If it is sound and honest and serves no special interest, what's the problem? He claims that H.R. 1207 would give power to Congress to affect monetary policy. He dreamt this up to instill fear, an old status trick to justify government power. H.R. 1207 does nothing of the sort. He suggested that the day after an FOMC meeting, Congress could send in the GAO to demand an audit of everything said and done. This is hardly the case. The FOMC function under 1207 would not change. The detailed transcripts of the FOMC meetings are released every 5 years, so why would this be so different, and what is it that they don't want the American people to know? Is there something about the transcripts that need to be kept secret, or are the transcripts actually not verbatim? Fed sycophants argue that an audit would destroy the financial market's faith in the Fed. They say this in the midst of the greatest financial crisis in history brought on by none other than the Federal Reserve. In fact, Chairman Bernanke stated on November 14, 2007 that, quote, a considerable amount of evidence indicates that central bank transparency increases the effectiveness of monetary policy and enhances economic and financial performance, close quote. They also argue that an audit would hurt the value of the U.S. dollar. In fact, the Fed, in less than 100 years of its existence, has reduced the value of the 1914 dollar by 96%. They claim H.R. 1207 would raise interest rates. How could it? The Fed sets interest rates, and the bill doesn't interfere with monetary policy. Congress would have no say in the matter. And besides, Congress likes low interest rates. It is argued that the Fed wouldn't be free to raise interest rates if they thought it necessary. But Bernanke has already assured the Congress that rates are going to stay low for the foreseeable future. And again, this bill does nothing to allow Congress to interfere with interest rate setting. Fed supporters claim that they want to protect the public's interests with their secrecy. But the banks and Wall Street are the opponents of 1207, and the people are for it. Just who best represents the public's interests? The real question is, why are Wall Street and the Fed so hysterically opposed to 1207? Just what information are they so anxious to keep secret? Only an audit of the Federal Reserve will answer these questions. And I yield back the balance of my time.
That was Ron Paul on the House floor. And in the Wall Street Journal today, what Fed audit legislation would mean